Please welcome Greg Dixon.
Well, good morning and welcome back. I think we've got about everybody back. That's good. That's good. We've had some debate over this, over the title of my presentation over the last few days and weeks. Future's cloudy. Some of our marketing and sales folks said it sounded a little negative. Are you sure you want to do this? And I said, yeah. So it really is designed to convey a couple of messages. And the first one is this: as we talk to you, as we talk to our partners, as we talk to our vendors, as we talk to our ISV partners, there is some cloudiness here. And it's not so much about what is the cloud and how does it work, that kind of thing. Even though I've done this presentation a couple times inside of our company to our sales teams. And I asked one day, I said, so how many of you are actually a cloud customer right now? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. And I got very few people that raise their hand. I said, wait, you guys not have a Gmail account? Okay, all right. And so really, you understand it from that perspective, and once you get it, it's really not that hard a thing to put your hands on. But the question is, how does this cloud fit into our channel? Is it a channel thing? Is it appropriate that we should play a role in this thing? And so the answer is yeah, okay, and we have to figure out how, but that how is really what the cloudy part is. And so hopefully maybe today we're going to just get us started thinking about some answers to that question. How do we play a role in this cloud economy, in this cloud delivery? And so it is a little cloudy at that standpoint. The other perspective, though, is that the future really is the cloud, and the cloud is in our future. And not that everything goes to the cloud, everything can't go to the cloud. You can't virtualize everything. But the fact is that we really do have to sort of wake up and pay attention and get on with our thinking. So that's what I hope to be able to do today. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about understanding cloud. I have just a little bit of an education session here. If you're going to have a discussion about something, you have to first sort of learn to speak the language. And so we'll do a little bit of that and sort of bring some of these terms in. We hear about data centers, but what does that have to do with the cloud? And is that the cloud? And I read an article on a magazine on the plane here this week, that your files are stored in the internet. And I'm going, oh, somebody should help this guy, because it's not. That's just not the case. And so what role do data centers, and what about hosting services and co-location? What is that? And virtualization, that's a great word, and you really got to get your hands around that. And what role does that play in all this? All these as a service offering, so we'll get a little language there and learn how to speak to some. And follow the theme here, the weather report. We'll get a weather report, and we'll see the fact that it's coming, like it or not. How big is it? When is it coming? Get some stats there. But I want to spend most of my time about how to weather the storm and adjustments to business model, and we'll talk more about that in great detail. And then lastly, what role do we play in this thing, and how do we work together? What's our directive here? And then hopefully maybe by the end of this thing we'll shed a little light on this cloudiness. So what is the cloud? I think about, well, where do I start a discussion like this? And so what I did is that I went to Google Images, and I Googled wide area network diagram. And this is what comes back. And so you see just about every one of them, there's a cloud there, there's a cloud, there's a cloud, there's a cloud, there's a bunch of clouds. Every one of them has a cloud in it. And so you think, well, what is that? And so a cloud in a wide area network diagram just is representative of IT resources that are outside the building somewhere, literally outside the parking lot, out there somewhere, right? And it's just a drawing, it's a representation of IT resources that are someplace else. And so that's really where it comes from. And I always get a little bit of because it's kind of obvious where it comes from, but unless you've done one of these, you don't really get an idea of where that term comes from. So you have to sort of come up with a definition of some sort. So we'll take a shot at it. Cloud computing is a model for enabling remote network access. There was a key word, remote network access. It's not local, it's remote, to a shared pool of computing resources, things like servers and the application software that runs on the servers, the storage that stores the files and data for those applications, and the services that go along with that. And as you begin to think about it, it depends on who you're talking to, when it comes to the cloud. You say, well, help me understand the cloud. You have to really get inside their mind, because cloud is a matter of perspective. And on the left here, you'll see, well, that company might define the cloud from the outside in. We're out here, and the cloud is over there, and it connects us, and it does these things. But other companies, like the ones on the right, define the cloud from the inside out. And you have to really take on the personality of who you're talking to find out what it is that how they're describing it and defining it. So, to help further define this, we're going to talk about 3 service models. Now, these are things you probably know, you think you know. We're going to glue it all together today, though, I promise you. 3 service models, 4 deployment models, and 5 essential attributes. These are the things that make the internet, make the cloud what it is, and make it profitable and make it possible. Okay, so we'll go into some detail with those things. So, let's talk about hosting for just a minute. Now, we're just going to learn to speak this language, and you talk about hosting, and we'll go out there somewhere, and we'll come there in a minute. But you can't have this discussion without starting a discussion in this traditional IT space. And it's something surely everybody in the room is comfortable with. We've been around it a lot in our own businesses, in our customers' businesses. Traditional IT on premises. The shortened version is on-prem. Some people say on-premise. That's just wrong, though. On-premises or on-prem, and so it's physically here. It's IT resources in the building, so to speak. Now, if you come to our building in Greenville, South Carolina, and go outside and wait about 5 minutes, you see this airplane go right overhead, down. We're right on the glide path for the Greenville-Spartanburg Airport. And so, the truth is, if one of those airplanes landed a little short one day, we'd have trouble, placing an order. And so what do we do in that regard? Is that we take our IT resources that run our company. Now, Phoenix and Buffalo wouldn't know, and they would go right on, and everything would be cool. But the reason is because we have most of our IT resources in a co-location facility off in Asheville, North Carolina, about an hour's drive away. And so, but you go to a colo, as it's called, and it's still your stuff. It's still your stuff. And we took all of our equipment, hauled it up there. They built a cage for us, and we put our stuff in there. We have the only key to it. And we manage it. That's a co-location facility. So it's still really our business. And colos do business from a wholesale perspective. They'll sell space to a data center who's then going to resell their services out to another company. But we're a retail customer of a co-location. So you have to sort of understand how the colo works. But it's still really that traditional IT is it's our stuff sitting someplace else. Still not hosted necessarily. All they're really hosting is the building. They're providing us with air conditioning. They're providing us with a big fat pipe, and they're providing us with the power necessary to do this. So let's move off to hosting now and figure out how that works out there. So from the hosted perspective, there are about 3 decisions you have to learn to make. And remember, when you're from this perspective, you're listening to the hosting company talk to you. So you have to take on their personality to understand these words. And unmanaged and managed, pretty straightforward, right? Managed means that the hosting company is going to manage this technology for you. Whereas unmanaged means you get to manage it yourself. Remotely, you're not going to go there. You might not even know where it is physically on the planet. And it might be in one place this month and someplace else the next month. But the truth is, you can manage it from where you are. And so you make a decision. Do I want my hosted technology to be unmanaged or managed? Managed costs a little more than unmanaged. Okay? You can see how that works. Next decision is standard versus custom. So, standard means that you can probably, if you go to them and say, I want your standard managed server. Okay, it's this particular, probably Dell server. This server. You don't get a choice. It's this server, it's this operating system. Here's what we consider to be our standard offering. Custom, on the other hand, you get some choices. Now, I'll be honest with you, a lot of these these hosted solutions, hosted companies, gone out of business because they let you customize your own thing, just about anything you want. Just do your own thing, right? But then really that's more like a colo. Why be a colo? And so custom, you might choose among these 5 Dell servers and maybe these 3 operating systems. And so custom, you get some choices. Now you learn to make, I want the custom unmanaged solution or I want the standard managed solution. And so you begin to overlap those things. Third choice is dedicated. Is this hardware, software, this stuff, is it going to be dedicated to me, or am I going to share it with someone else? And so these are resources that, honestly, multiple companies will share. We'll talk about virtualization in a minute, how that works. But so I make the decision. Do I want it dedicated to me? Do I want it shared? And so in that regard, managed, let's say unmanaged costs less than managed. Standard costs a little less than custom. And shared costs less than dedicated. See how it works. And so you can, with those little overlapping grids, you can figure out, how to speak the language. Now, there's a little sort of predictive notion about those blue triangles there, in that over time, hosting companies what they want is that their solutions become less and less dedicated and more shared, because that gives them a little more control, it gives them a little more price sensitivity, and it's better for them. So maybe over time that will occur. Now, in all reality, though, you're not likely to have any one or those of the other things. You're probably going to have a hybrid solution, and so you probably wouldn't have just one or the other. But in all honesty, your hybrid solution will look more like this, is because there's never going to be, your whole IT department just can't live out there in that little cloud thing. There will always be on-premises hardware and or co-located facilities, and perhaps some hosted solutions. Some of them might be dedicated and custom. Some of them might be managed and shared. Maybe your websites, you want them just managing, give me the load balancing and all the cool things, and let you manage that thing for me. But this CRM thing, I gotta kind of own it myself. And so I may want it on premises, or I may allow you to host it, but I'll manage it myself. Now, if you ask the clouds, where does the cloud fit into that discussion? If you ask the hosting company, where is the cloud? They define the cloud right there, right down here in standard managed land. And so they said, this is the cloud. You want cloud computing? This is what we're going to sell you. But if you ask that same question to most any CIO in America or IT manager, really the cloud looks more like this, guys. It really does. And so, and we'll explain why in just a minute. How can the cloud now encompass that equipment that has been sitting in my IT department, honestly, for years? We didn't call it the cloud back then. But now it's the cloud? Yeah, and we'll maybe get to that, all right? So hosting landscape, that's kind of how we define some of that. So let's deal with these three service models for just a minute. These are things that you've probably heard about, read about, maybe participate in some way. Infrastructure as a service, this is just exactly what it says. It's servers and storage and networks and the things that are fundamental to running an IT business, but it's being provided by a hosting company. And so along with that comes the cooling and the power and the security, both physical and data security, and the network access, all those things that come along with it. And you know, the more servers you put in your own IT room, the more air conditioning you have to provide, the more power you have to provide, the fatter the pipe has to be. And so a lot of what you're really getting from these companies is something they call ping, power, and pipe. It's just the basic infrastructure pieces that allows this stuff to work as well. And so infrastructure as a service is an offering of a hosting company. Another offering, and by the way, that's really for sort of network engineers, infrastructure as a service. There's something else called platform as a service. And so if you're developing an application that's going to be specifically delivered through the internet, then you can purchase from the hosting company the whole platform necessary to do that. And it's the middleware, it's the database infrastructure in the backside, it's the storage that goes with it, all the operating systems, all the things necessary to develop the application, the testing facilities, and then ultimately, once you have developed the app, then it'll sit right on that platform, and that's where it gets delivered from, okay? And some examples, things like, so Microsoft has one called Azure, Salesforce.com, Force.com is their platform. Google has one. Rackspace participates in a thing called OpenStack. And so because of all of these are proprietary, once you kind of get in with a development platform, you're kind of stuck there. And so a lot of people don't like that. The open source is a good idea, I think. And so OpenStack is the open source platform as a service. And it's for software engineers, developers. The third one is software as a service, and this is the one you're probably most familiar with. And so once the platform, the application gets developed, then it just becomes software as a service. Forget about how it's delivered anymore. That's just the product maybe you're purchasing from the hosting company. But software as a service, standard applications running specifically in a thin client environment. That's what makes it, which means you're getting access to this thing through a browser. Again, go back to Gmail. The good examples, Gmail and Google Apps is a great example of this. Microsoft's new Microsoft 365. If you're familiar with BroadSoft, voice as a service, Salesforce.com is a good example of these kinds of things. And so you may have, if you have your own application, then you may be thinking, hey, I'm headed this way myself. And so maybe you have your own software as a service offering somewhere in your plans or your thinking. So those are your three service models. Now let's hit these four deployment models for just a minute. And so you'll see my little drawing down here that we learned how to use a few minutes ago. And so as I develop these, you'll see where they land over here. So private cloud, you'll see the private cloud lives right down there, right? And so the private cloud is sort of the new name for the old thing. And the private cloud is on premises or co-located. It's your stuff. And it could be operated as a private cloud, your own private cloud infrastructure. It's primarily virtualized servers and thin client apps. Now, virtualized servers, we'll talk a little bit about in a second here. Is that what makes it? That's really what makes it the cloud. And so that's the technology that's made the cloud possible. And therefore, now the things in your own building now become part of the cloud because of virtualized servers. So there's a private cloud. You can also buy a virtual private cloud. It's exactly the same thing, but it's over here being hosted by the hosting company now. Instead of your own stuff, it's hosted out here. Not much difference really between that and this, maybe some of the pricing. So maybe hosted by someone else. Now, let's take just a second and stop and let's do just a little course on virtualization. Probably something we know some things about, maybe, but so on the left here, you'll see in that traditional data center, you'll see 5 servers, each server running its own operating system, running its own application. And that's the traditional way to do it. Each server back there has its own, probably a gigabit Ethernet port behind it, and that's the traditional way. But in a virtualized environment, you take maybe that same exact server right there, but it's now running 5 virtual servers. One physical server running 5 virtual servers. Those same 5 apps, each with its own separate, different operating system, perhaps. And so you'll get this term virtual server. So there's one physical server, but it's running 5 virtual servers. And the word multi-tenant comes to play here. It sounds like a building with multiple families. It's the same kind of an idea. It's one server with multiple users all in there at the same time. They're all sort of cohabitating this one physical server. So multi-tenant is a term that applies there. VM, virtual machine. So you might say that inside of that one physical server are 5 VMs. Do the same thing with storage, by the way. Storage devices, you can share them and they can become virtualized as well. Hypervisor is a term a hypervisor is the software that makes all this virtualization possible. And so hypervisors, don't confuse it with operating systems now. So it's not Windows, it's not Linux. It's a traffic cop is what it is. And it sits in there and it takes the physical resources of this server and it allocates little time sockets. Listen, if you've been around the IT business as long as I have, this sounds strangely familiar, right? To an old IBM mainframe kind of a world. We've kind of come full circle here, to be honest with you. And so VMware are the guys who got all this started here a few years ago. They hold the vast majority of the market space at this point in terms of hypervisors. And so VMware has one, Red Hat's got one, Citrix, these guys go about it a little different ways, but they ultimately the results are the same, Microsoft as well. And so those are the hypervisors. They make virtualization possible. One more piece here, virtualized switching fabric. So I mentioned that the left side, you've got 5 sort of maybe gigabit Ethernet ports, one for each server, but you virtualize them over into one server. Now how many ports do you need? 1. But the problem is each one of those virtual servers might live in its own VLAN. Okay, I'm getting a little geeky here, technical with you, but the fact is what you can do there is have virtual Ethernet ports behind. And so the switching fabric that connects all this together also participates in this virtualized world. So that's a virtualized data center. Let's set that aside and move on here for just a minute. Now that we understand that term, we can use that term later on. We will. Community cloud, it's just sort of worth mentioning, I suppose. You know, if you had several companies who maybe had an affinity for something, maybe they were nonprofits or something, they get together, they block purchase this thing because it's all very similar to them. You might call that a community cloud, something that's maybe developing. Private cloud, public cloud. Those are the 2 major definitions here. And so public cloud lives down here, right? Like the hosting center said. It's provided by hosting companies. It's shared infrastructure. Okay, that means it's virtualized. That means your website might be on an identical server with your competitor's website, and neither website even knows or cares that it even exists out there. And so it's shared infrastructure. It's accessible over the public internet. Keep that in mind for these cloud-based and remotely delivered services. And so that's the public cloud. Private cloud, public cloud. And then the final one is something we've talked about before, and that's this hybrid. You might as well go ahead and call it that, because honestly, that's probably what most companies in America have or will have, is a hybrid cloud. You're never going to have just one complete thing. So a combination of two or more of these other things, hybrid cloud's really the most common deployment of this thing. So 3 service models, 4 deployment models, and 5 essential attributes. So let's hit these things. And this is a combination of various things that I've read and learned over some time here. And so these are the things that make the cloud possible and profitable and give its potential. But also, here's another P word, promise. These are mostly still promises in a lot of regards. And so on-demand self-service. Now, there's the cloud provides the promise of on-demand self-service. That means that literally a company can resource a server in a very short amount of time. If you go to your IT department or your customers and say, okay, we're gonna have a brand new piece of software, now get that thing working. Well, okay, so you got to get started. They have to, order the server. It's got to come in. I got to load the OS. I got to rack and stack it. I got to get it in the switching fabric. Got to get it managed. Got to load the software on there. CD, and off they go. It might take 2 weeks to provision this one server, but the promise of the cloud is that literally you go to your web portal, the cloud provider's web portal, click a few buttons, and within a few minutes, they've spun up a brand new server for you, just like you wanted, and it's ready for you to load your app on. And so on-demand self-service is a huge promise of the cloud. Another one is broad network access, and so a lot of discussion about this, but it really does assume, the cloud assumes that everybody who needs it will have access to it, and that the internet is the method to get there. And so it requires a persistent network. Think about the history of the internet over time. We were talking about our first website and how we were proud of our little barcode dog. His name was Cody, and he had a little tail that went tick, 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 like this. We were so proud of that little tail that went back and forth, right? Very cool website in 1995. We hadn't a clue, man. We didn't, the fact that the internet was down today, okay, the internet's down today, no big deal. But literally, we've come a long way, from then. And so the whole promise of the cloud depends on the fact that there's broad network access, that the internet is going to be fast enough and it's going to be persistent. It's going to work when you need it. Sorry, wrong way. Resource pooling. This is the whole idea about virtualization. And so it's virtualization, multi-tenancy, load balancing. It's those technologies that make the cloud possible. And it's servers and storage, the fact that they're shared, that's what also makes the cloud affordable. It makes it less expensive than doing it yourself. Resource pooling. Rapid elasticity sounds a lot like the first one, but it basically says that if I'm the kind of company who needs more resources, let's say I sell a product that's based on the back to school, kind of cycles. And so in June, July, August, I need to sort of crank up my resources some. And the idea here is that I can dial those things up when I need more, but I can dial them back down when I need less. And so this rapid elasticity is a promise of cloud computing. And then finally, measured service. This gets the most attention of all, is that it basically makes your IT resources now an operational expense. Okay? It's a recurring, it's predictable to some degree. I know what it's going to be. I don't own any of it. It's just like I pay for my IT resources the same way I pay for my power bill. And you only pay for exactly what you use, So those are the 5 essential attributes. Those are the things that make the cloud what it is. Let's set those aside for a minute now, and let's review those things from the perspective of resellers. Now, when a reseller looks at those 5 things, here are some thoughts, some ideas that you might be thinking. So when you see, and the question is, where's my opportunity there? How do I participate here? So when it comes to on-demand self-service, the fact is that the cloud still is fairly complex to a lot of customers. Now, if you go to a really big, top of the pyramid kind of company, they probably got people who figured it out, and they're probably going along pretty well. But that's not the bulk of the IT in America. Is that the bulk of IT really is in that small and medium-sized, mid-tier kind of company, much like ours, who are saying to itself, I'm still, not completely understanding of what value this is going to bring to me. And so the reseller needs to take advantage of that cloudiness, pardon the pun there, but take advantage of that, and while it's still complex, and make sure that you're selling, integration services and interoperability services and change management, business process. Help customers with their misunderstandings and their lack of understanding. Insert yourself into that discussion about on-demand self-service. Broad network, really no matter how fast or reliable or ubiquitous the internet gets, there will always, 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 always be premises hardware. Always, guys. And listen, that's the business we're in. That's the business we're in. We sell, just look at our catalog. Look at the original catalog, look at the one we sell today. We're all about end devices, no matter what market you're in, and the infrastructure that connects those end devices to themselves and to the broader network. And so if your business model includes that, then there's plenty of opportunity here. And so end devices will always require, and network devices always require value-added services. And so from that perspective, keep that in mind, and there's always opportunity there. Resource pooling is just private cloud. You can do that. You can do server virtualization on premises. That's a service you can still provide. That's that private cloud. Rapid elasticity, not done every day. If I'm that company who sells to the school cycle, I might do that once a year, and I'm going to be afraid to do that. I want to call you up and say, look, come down here. We're going to get this right. We're going to need to roll up our resources here. Give us some help. And so, because it's not done every day, users are still going to require the kinds of services that I think resellers will always be able to provide. And then finally, measured service. This is the trickiest one again, but think about account billing equals account ownership. Today, you might, most of our deals are kind of project-oriented. They're kind of one and done. And you go in and you might send that customer bill once a year for your maintenance contract. If you really got them hooked, maybe it's once every 3 years. And so the cloud really does require a monthly billing cycle. And so let's start to get that into our thinking here. I'm not quite sure where we're going to go with it yet, but account billing, customers are going to want to this OpEx option. So you need to be prepared to sell an OpEx package of some sort. And it'll include cloud and services and software and hardware and all sorts of other things. Some of it's going to be CapEx. A part of it now is going to be OpEx. Now, those same 5 essential attributes, set them aside and let's look at them through the end user's eyes for just a minute. Okay? End users. So what do end users think when they see these things? Your customers. So first of all, CompTIA did a pretty good survey. I think it was 1,500 responses, and 56% of end users said, honestly, I still don't have a clear definition of it. Tell me what it is, I'll buy some, right? But they also surveyed resellers, asked them the same question about what do you know about the cloud? You know what the percentage was? 63%. 63% of resellers said, I still don't know what this darn thing is. Help me with it. So end users. When end users see on-demand self-service, what do they think? They think, well, still unclear. I'm unclear about the value proposition to me. So it may work fine for those big guys, but I'm not so sure what this is going to do for me. Broad network access. I'm an old timer here, and I still don't trust that internets thing, right? Not quite sure. Wait a minute. You want me to put my whole company and make it depend on the what? Okay, so you still get a lot of that kind of a discussion. And so still there's a lot of mistrust about the net. And they've come to expect, honestly, 5 nines. You go to any telephone in America, you pick it up, what do you get? Dial tone, right? It's a God-given right in America, dial tone. And so that's 5 nines of reliability, and that comes from 120 years of expertise and experience, right? That's how you get 5 nines. But Amazon is the very biggest cloud provider. You know how many nines they can give you? The very most is 3. And 3 nines of reliability, 99.9% amounts to between 8 and 9 hours of downtime a year, and you don't get to pick which 8 or 9. And so, you come to expect those kind of things, but we're just not there yet with this kind of a thing. And Amazon, they have 5 big, not to knock on Amazon here, but they are the biggest player in all this, the biggest one. Think Amazon, that's where I buy my books, right, and my shoes. They're the biggest cloud provider in the world. And so they have 5 big data centers that cover the planet. 2 of them are in North America, and one of them went off the grid the other day, right? A couple of months ago, off the grid for 2 weeks. And everybody's website, all the databases, everything went away with it. And so, that kind of press, you don't really get, it doesn't really help the idea of this poor guy who's saying, I'm going to have to trust my whole company's well-being, to this network connection here. So end users, still not quite fully trusting of how the internet's going to work for them. Resource pooling, end user says, especially the more sophisticated ones, say we can do that ourselves. We're a good example. We had 100 at one point in time, we had 135 servers all racked and stacked in our IT department right there at our ScanSource Greenville headquarters. And we virtualized them down to about 30. Now, later on, we moved them all off-site, and now they're up in Asheville with redundant systems back in our Greenville office. And so, but from an end user's perspective, I can do that. That's a fairly mature technology these days. Rapid elasticity, again, not sure that's even for me. That's not my business model. And a lot of companies are not going to really see too much value in rapid elasticity. Some will, but not a lot. Certainly not the majority. Measured service, though, kind of like that. Kind of like the idea of not having have to write the big check for some of this stuff. And so they like the idea of an OpEx solution or adding some component of that. And there are even some accounting rules changes that are coming along. And Mike threatened me if I talked about this, so I won't. But there are some accounting rules about leasing and those kind of things that are a lot of things, not just technology things, but a lot of things are driving to the adoption of cloud. So, there's my 3, 4, and 5. So let's talk about software as a service for just a minute. We've identified that. Now we can have a conversation around it. And software as a service adopters, if you go back to 2000, 2005 era, so to speak, that was the SMB who were the early adopters of software as a service. It makes sense to a small guy. He can trust less. He has to trust less of his resources out to this thing. And so you'll see some good examples out there, good examples of SMB adoption, Salesforce.com, right? Google Apps, great example, a great example. And so a lot of small businesses adopt these things early on. The big guys might have done one thing. Maybe it's WebEx or something, okay? But now jump forward to today, and where does that lead us? The SMB is still the early adopter, still the heavy adopter. Many, many more applications that live in the SMB than do even the large guys. Now, both are growing crazy. The adoption of software as a whole has increased dramatically because it's easier to get to, easier to buy. You don't have to make a long-term commitment. And so there are all sorts of reasons. But hear me when I say this. The SMB guy, if that's who you sell to, he's the guy that's probably more keen on this topic of software as a service even than the big enterprise guys. Whew, boy, let's slow down a minute. I'm really racing here. So just a little bit of statistics in the middle. I promised you a little bit of a weather report. So statistics. 50 million servers in the world. And by 2013, 10% of them will be virtualized to 10 VMs per server. This morning we couldn't have said that sentence, right? But now you know what that means. And let me tell you what that really means to you. It means that we can double the server capacity on the planet Earth every 2 years. So the server capacity is going to be, we're really not going to outstrip that. In fact, half the servers that server manufacturers make today go into these public data centers, okay, like the one here in the bottom left-hand corner. It's Apple's new 1 million square foot data center in Maiden, North Carolina. There's one Hardee's restaurant in Maiden, North Carolina. I've been there. And so they put this 1 million square foot data center up there. If you read about iCloud, that's the iCloud right there. And so Google says they have 1 million, really more like 2 million servers I read. They say we'll have 10 million in 10 years. And so listen, guys, of the 33,000 public data centers worldwide, 23,000 of them in this country. In this country. Now, you read Gartner, and Gartner will always be great with a statistic, and they'll say 40 billion in this year that we're in. That's cloud services purchases, the total of the cloud computing, global market. 177 in about 3 or 4 years. 241, just look at the growth rate. 40, 177, 241, out to about 9, 10 years here. Merrill Lynch, though, says 160 billion in 2011. How is that? Those don't rhyme up. And it's probably because they're defining the cloud differently. The question they asked the customer, was different from one group to the other. Do you find public, do you include public in that, yes or no? And so Merrill Lynch has a different number. AMI says just SMB spending will be 100 billion in 2014. So a lot of it. Listen, software as a service is growing 5 times faster than traditional perpetual license software. 5 times faster. Now, having said all that, regardless of how you define the cloud, the fact is the cloud is big and getting bigger, fast. It's growing faster than any other area of IT spending. But even if Gartner's close, in this year we're in right now, total cloud spending, 2% of the total. 2% of the total IT spend is the cloud. And jump forward to that great big number they're threatening us without in 2015, still only 5%. That's growing. Let's don't lose track of that. But what does this tell us? Well, the world's not going to end on Thursday. There's plenty of opportunity for a long span here. So that's a tough word. I've struggled with it some, disruptive technology, but I'm going to tell you, if there ever was one, this is it. This is a disruptive technology, and I'll tell you why. It's because end users will make it so. The end users of our technology solutions will make it so. And one of the reasons is, software licensing. It's their way to finally get back at the software companies, and because they don't, the software companies get to determine how they sell their product. Nothing wrong with that, but perpetual license. Here's it's going to cost me X thousands, but then I have to pay 20% of that or 10% of that every single year for the privilege of owning it. I'm just thinking the end user thoughts here, right? And so the end user says, this is my chance. This is going to allow me to sort of finally be in the driver's seat here a little bit. And hardware acquisition patterns and obsolescence and replacement, upgrade schedules get disrupted by this. Now, you have to be careful. What hardware are we talking about? And so if it's the infrastructure hardware, the servers and the storage piece of it, that's where you have the most threat. That's where it's most disruptive. And if you look at some of our competitors' cloud perspectives, they're scared. They're really unnerved by this. The big broadline distributors are unnerved by this because, guess what? That's what they distribute. A whole lot of that backroom infrastructure that gets virtualized and moved off to the cloud somewhere. But most of the hardware, honestly, that we sell, that you guys sell, that we have in our warehouse today, is less disrupted by this. And so it's that edge device, the end device. And so some of the software delivery mechanism may get changed a little bit, but the hardware. So make sure you're looking at what hardware you're talking about when you hear about it's going to be disrupted. And this whole notion of OpEx, it really is advantageous to some companies. If they're a startup, maybe they're just a newly acquired company. The big guys don't want to spend the big bucks right away. This is a good way to sort of jump into something where it's advantageous to a CapEx expense when it comes to the software and some of the infrastructure pieces of it. So I've got about 3 or 4 of these slides that I call business transformation. And listen to me now. I certainly can't tell you how to run your business. You guys are the expert. You've done great. That's why you're here today. You're just the cream of the crop. And so I certainly don't have any advice for you, but I do want to share with you just some thinking, some things that have learned, we're still learning every day. Man, just on the airplane coming over here this week, I'm just writing down notes and scribbling things. There are things in this presentation I picked up this week. And so let's talk for just a minute about business transformation. So if the cloud is going to transform your business to some degree, then what are some of the thoughts you need to begin thinking? So let me just help you with some of that. This is just things that we've learned along the way here. Still learning. So make a business plan and write it down. So if your business plan today, first of all, you don't have one, okay, get one. It's a good idea to write it on a piece of paper. It's a great exercise. But write one now that includes some cloud words in there somewhere, right? Include some cloud discussion in your business plan and begin to talk to your customers about it. Let me tell you, there are two or three things that you just don't want to have happen. And the first thing that you don't want to have happen is for your end user to develop a direct relationship with a cloud provider. Direct. Because trust me, they will do it. They will do it in a heartbeat. Their business model is designed to do just exactly that. Look at Salesforce.com. Okay? And so the last thing you want your end user to do is to go out on their own because of something. They saw some commercial on television, Microsoft saying, let's go to the cloud, Okay. So they read up something. They said, let's go and do that. We can do that ourselves. I don't need anybody's help. So listen, that's bad. Don't do that. Get in front of that. And so begin to talk to your customers about what the cloud might mean to them. And shift your business slowly. You don't need to rush out. And with no reason for us to push this thing along. It's going to go plenty fast on its own. We don't need to drive it along. Okay? And as customers learn about cloud applications, they're going to expect a response from you. You're their trusted advisor. So be that, right? Be it. And be the cloud to them. And finally, don't give it away. You say, oh, this is low margin, this is skinny, this is that. Well, listen, I've already told you there's plenty of mystery out there. And I love my phrase, where there's mystery, there's margin, right? It's an old adage. And so, listen, while there's still mystery here, I say it like that, be careful. While there's still mystery here, because it won't be much mystery for very long, but while there's mystery, take advantage of that and make sure you charge for that. Make sure you charge for your expertise and your services, okay? As you're developing your business plan, then keep these things in mind. Keep in mind that cloud services tend to be sticky. That means that once it gets there, it's going to be hard to get it out. They tend to be viral. Once they get one, they're going to want more. But they're also going to commoditize faster than other things that you're accustomed to. And it's because of that just enormous amount of information and hype, mega hype that's involved around the cloud right now. And so the price structure on this thing is going to diminish faster than we would like it to probably. And so let's, again, take advantage of it while you can, but as you build your business plan, you have to take that into consideration. All right, now this one's busy. I want to take a minute with this. So can I make money? And the answer is yes. So when you think about cloud offerings, if I can sort of put two words together, cloud offerings. Now these aren't cloud offerings. That's really a misnomer. It's an offering that includes some cloud. Okay, that's a much better way to say it because that's technically the truth. That's exactly what it is. So when you consider a cloud-based solution or a solution that includes some cloud offering, then you might think, well, maybe there's certain kinds of businesses that I could focus my attention on. Maybe some who do have some rise and fall in their IT needs, or someone who is more suited to a cloud solution. So maybe you build a vertical solution around that particular customer set to start with and kind of pick the low-hanging fruit to start with maybe. Maybe you can have a hosted offering for customers who ask for it. Now, I'll list three here: voice, video conferencing, and video surveillance. Now, those are some really hot topics in some other partner conferences, right? Other ScanSource business units right now, because they're a huge threat to a lot of what we're doing in those spaces. And they are more mature. So voice as a service, video conferencing as a service, video surveillance as a service are rapidly maturing market spaces. And if that's where you live and you can participate in those things, then maybe you can integrate those offerings into your solution as well. Remember, cloud is just a service model. So sell solutions that include cloud services along with your other services. And so, never forget, services with a lot of money in services. Build that into the place and build some cloud services. Your expertise needs you sell that, right? And so sell your cloud expertise along with it. And I'm going to say embrace this monthly billing model. I know I'm sort of driving that thing along a little bit, but the billing component is the piece that's the most strange to us all, perhaps. And a lot of companies these days are MSPs, managed service providers, and I do a lot of work with CompTIA in the sort of traditional mainstream IT space. A lot of people have gone to an MSP model, and they've learned to embrace this. And I'm told that a healthy managed service provider should have between 30 and 40% of their total revenue from monthly billing, recurring revenue sources. That's a healthy business. I'd venture to say that most of our businesses are somewhere south of that. And so begin to build toward that and begin to think about recurring revenue streams. You can say, oh, it's all about monthly billing, my AR, what am I going to do? Turn the table on that and call it something positive. We're going to have a recurring revenue stream, an annuity that we can work from, right? Build that up. Now, it may not, listen, you start here and you say, well, I need to get over to here and I need my revenues to be the same, but I need more of it to be recurring. There's going to be a little gap in there. You need to plan for it. You need to plan for how am I going to get from there to here. And so start with one customer and build a practice. How do I pay my salespeople? So just think, you're going to have to rethink that model just a little bit. Don't throw your comp plan out, but in your new business plan, put some ideas in there about how am I going to incent my sales reps correctly and appropriately to sell this recurring revenue stream. Think about life insurance model or something like that. So own this relationship. I'm going to come back to this one more time now. So don't let your customer go around you because it's easy to do. So I want you to be the cloud provider for your company, and don't let them go direct. Listen, take the cloud services and privately label them. Make them yours. Label these are your cloud services, right? And so relabel them as that. And the cloud is not something to be sold anyway. Listen, it's just the truck that gets the thing where it's going from point A to point B. And so don't sell the cloud. The cloud is just a delivery mechanism. So sell your services, sell yourself, own the relationship. That's the way I say it. And with cloud, you're going to have a new set of messages, some new things that you might not have been able to say before. And so you can maybe start the conversation by, look, I can save you some money with this. Now, your back pocket might hurt a little up front, but you're going to have this conversation up front. And you can say, look, I can save you some money with this. I can improve your business communications. I've got new things to offer you. Things like, look, I can give you system redundancy. I can give you data backup, data security, business continuity. Those are all cloud-based services. And now they're new things that you can sell, resell for a profit. And they're monthly recurring revenue streams. Look, my service, my cloud services, I can give you scalable resources and to help you with your seasonal or project-based things. So you should turn that around. You own that message now. You own that cloud message. Look, I'm your cloud provider. You don't need to talk to anybody. I'm your cloud provider. And that's the message that you should be able to take to customers. So you can be the cloud, okay? So be the cloud. And I'm not saying compete with Rackspace or Amazon, but be the cloud to your customer. When they think of cloud, they need to think about you. That's the first message. So to your customers, you are the cloud. So be the cloud. You can sell the cloud as well. And you're going to be able to sell cloud basics. These are just services, products that you can resell that you didn't have before. So basic things like backup and recovery, raw data storage, maybe for video surveillance or whatever, email by the seat. You turn on bring up those new stores. They want a software as a service orientation. You can say, look, I can give you, for just a few bucks a month, I can give you an email account for every single employee. That's a brand new thing. It's so easy. No servers. Just turn them on by the employee. Dial it up and down as they add employees or add stores or whatever. And then a few more advanced things like infrastructure service. You say you need your website hosted. I'm your hosting company. Talk to me. I'll get your website hosted for you. And then these other as a service, things like hosted VoIP and video conferencing, those kinds of things. You can sell those things perhaps. And then ultimately your cloud services, remember, software as a service version of your own application perhaps. That's where you're headed. Implementation and training and all the value adds, moves, adds, and changes, all the value adds that you're really accustomed to providing today. Okay? And so you can be the cloud, you can sell the cloud, and you can sell to the cloud. Now, remember, part of the cloud is the private cloud, which is in the data center. And when you think of data centers, you may see data centers that look like this, with all the amazing, structured wiring plans and lots of winking and twinkling lights, rows and rows and rows of racks. Or you may be a little more accustomed to that kind of a back room. That's kind of what ours looked like, Mike, in that first year, right? Some shelves that we bought at Kmart. But when you sell to the cloud, you're really selling into the data center. And more than likely, it's going to be something in between those two. So when you're selling to the data center, then remember, most of the cloud today, is still inside the four walls of the enterprise or in their colo. Most of it today. And so your opportunity to sell to that cloud is still enormous. These are pictures of our colo up in Asheville, North Carolina that I was telling you about. And so we were up there. I walked up to the chain link fence and put my camera lens through the chain and took this picture. And so this bank over on the right-hand side here is what runs all of ScanSource North America today, all of it. That's it up in the upper right-hand corner over there. That left-hand one, though, you heard Mike talk about ERP. That's our new ERP project on the left-hand side over there. But you'll see that 95%. 95% of all the equipment in that room we purchased from VARs. You think, holy smokes, not you guys. You have all those direct relationships. Surely you could, yep, we could have, I suppose. But the fact is, we buy from VARs for the same reason that anybody does, is that we want the expertise that you can provide and the confidence that I can get. I want one throat to choke sometimes, right? I want that. And so we're a pretty big company, you might think. We're a mid-sized company, but we bought 95% of what's in there from VARs, the way most people do. And so when you go into that market, know the market. If you have a vendor that you're going to kind of go in on the coattails of, know that vendor's strategy and align yourself with that vendor's strategy. It's always a good idea to be able to tell the same story when you're in there. develop a solution set that makes sense to your customer set, and go for it. Whew, I have no idea where I am time-wise. So here we are. So be nimble and be prepared. That's my message to you, right? Be nimble, be prepared. Change is inevitable, and so is the cloud. It's just going to be the truth of the matter. And it's going to affect each of us differently. It's not one solution here or one big thing that we're all going to have to deal with. Everybody's going to have to take this thing on, and it'll affect us differently. But you can weather the storm if you're prepared, and we can help. We can help. So what role do we play in all this? Our role has not changed. I was looking in the package that Mike had down here that he got from Ken a while ago, and I was reading the announcement, the press release for this, the announcement of this new little barcode startup in South Carolina. And I was reading some of the comments that Mike made in there to the person taking the interview, and I'm going to tell you the things he promised, the things he said we were going to do. The fact is, they are still exactly the same. We haven't changed a bit. And Ken had written in the back there, "They will program my scanners for me." I like that, right? And so that was in 1993. Listen, the model hasn't changed, and the model won't change when it comes to cloud. We're still your cloud distributor, and we're going to do the same things that we always do for you. We're going to give you education and understanding. Remember Mark's big yellow bar on the left-hand side over there, that's really what you're looking for, is understanding and connection to new technologies. That's what we're all about. We're not going to change that. That's what we do. We get you in connection with cloud solution sets and the opportunity. We're going to connect you with this thing, give you what you need. We're going to be the one-stop shop for you. So you'll be able to come to one place, consolidated resources, all the hardware and the software and the cloud services, everything that you need for a whole solution that includes the cloud. And then cloud solution sets. And so a common one is virtualization, server switching, storage. And so that's a solution set. And if that's your thing and that's what you want to go in and sell that into the private cloud, that's good. But there's a bunch of different things you can come up with. And so these synchronized drop boxes and email and software as a service and something I'm calling solution as a service. I don't quite know what that'll mean yet, but a solution as a service. And so we're your cloud distributor, guys, and nothing's going to change in the way that we deliver this product and the way we do anything else. I went out to Sumo, and I just typed in cloud, 131 responses. I was pleased. So there's 131 offerings and companies who identify themselves with the cloud that are just the ones inside of Sumo today. And that's a fairly small audience, 1,600, I think, providers in there. And so you see Sumo, and you see that we're already there. This is not something brand new that we're cranking up this week. But it is something we need to begin to consider. So let me end with this. Yesterday, Brenda called these power tools. I like that. And then Mark talked about them again today. And so there's Sumo down there, and ISV Source and App Source, Cloud Marketplace, I'll call it that for the time being. And then the source here are blogs and our community. And you look at these tools, and that's just a few of them, guys. There are a lot more of them out there. And we have tools in our toolbox, and there's no doubt about it. But the fact is, no matter what tools, and there's another one. Okay, we're going to bring cloud in there. There'll be another one for you to another password you'll have to remember or whatever it is, right? The point here is this, though, is that the model, the role that we play will not change. And our job is to facilitate this channel. We're always going to facilitate this channel. And so we're going to be in that middle role right there. And we're always going to connect the players of this channel. And on any given day, you probably won't participate in have all these tools in your toolbox. But the ones that make sense to you on any given day, Sumo might be in that middle position right there. And when Sumo's in there, it's going to be about partnerships. It's going to facilitate partnerships. And it's partnerships from one VAR to another. And it's partnerships between ISVs and vendors. And these affiliates, the people who round out a solution and provide the things that maybe we don't sell, but you need to know who they are. And that's where you go to find them, is in Sumo. And so Sumo's all about facilitating partnerships. On any other given day, then ISV Source might be in the driver's seat there. And when it's there, it's going to facilitate connections. And so ISV Source is about connecting software partners with VARs and resellers back with the software, the ISV community. And so we're going to facilitate connections using ISV Source. At another time, it might be App Source. And so App Source is going to develop new business opportunities, brand new things you didn't have before, real new connections between community players, between developers and VARs and end users, and it's going to really create new opportunities for you. Then there's this cloud marketplace. I call it Cloud Services Marketplace as a placeholder of some sort. But when it's there, listen, it's going to facilitate innovation. It's going to bring innovation to you. It's going to help you push your envelopes just a little bit and stretch yourselves into some places maybe where you weren't before. And then another place you might find the source there, and you might be reading and learning about things. Jeff Yelton's a great blogger. I love to read Jeff's blogs. And so you're reading and learning about something new, learning about what's fresh on his mind, learning what we're learning as we go along, and we're going to facilitate communications that way. So, at the end of the day, we are what we've always been, and we're a distributor. And so, what we're going to do is that we're going to bring these things to you with the highest level of expertise we possibly can. You know, we're going to do our homework. We're going to be over-prepared when it comes to this, and we're going to provide you with things that honestly you can read and you can learn from, and we're going to bring the highest level of expertise that we possibly can to every single one of these things. And we're going to give you reach like you can't do yourself. You know, the distributor's the only player in the room. We're the only one in the room who can provide the reach that we do. That's what we do for you. And so we give you reach into new communities and new groups of customers and new end user communities and on and on. And so we're going to give you the reach that you need. But go back to that press release. I know Mike and I have been now almost 20 years at this thing together. And so from the very beginning to this very day is that we have strived to build your trust and to earn your trust and to maintain that trust. And it's not something we take for granted, I'm going to tell you. And so what we do is everything we do, we'll always do it with the highest level of integrity possible. And you know, when it comes to these things down here, guys, we're not going to stop. You know, we're going to have another one this year and another one next year and a whole new sumo in another couple of months that you'll take a look at, and, you know, a whole lot of cool things that'll be coming along. But when we do these things, you got to believe me when I say that these things are born out of a passion. They are. They're born out of a passion to fulfill our mission in life, you know. We're born to live out our purpose. And our purpose is to help you live out yours. Thanks very much.